Hi, Ravi.
Hello. Welcome back to you and our listeners.
Glad to be here. And we're going to tackle that ego today, I think. At least talk about how it um operates, whether we
hmm
choose to have it operating or not. It has its own way of being.
Yeah, last time we talked a lot about the eclipses and karma and how those two relate. And it's kind of like, well, why? What's that all about? Why do we have to do that? What's going on here? And it's all about evolution of the ego.
Yes, it is. And not to say that all egos evolve. Sometimes egos are at a particular point, and that's the experience for the lifetime. So
Where they
know
stay.
that any pathway that we talk about having to do with ego isn't necessarily an ideal or an expected way of being. It is just the general way that the ego operates as we live one or many lifetimes.
Maybe we should talk about what is ego because it can maybe the connotation or what folks are getting in their mind is different than what we think of when we think of the identity, ego identity.
Yes.
Well, from a Kundalini perspective, we have the 10 bodies, not just the physical body, but we also have the three minds, the positive, negative, neutral mind, and we have the subtle body and the spirit body. We have the auric body, and there's others. But my point is, what we're getting to is there's many aspects of us that make us human, and that ego identity is that, hi, I'm Robbie. Um,
Mhm.
I'm Jennifer. This is who I am. This is how I show up in the world. This is that. It's the little I and the big I am,
Mhm.
I think, is how
Mhm.
I may see that.
Hmm. Yeah, and you just described the influence of the sun in your chart. It's
Yeah.
how you show up. So the sun, wherever it's placed in your chart, often indicates where the ego may need a little adjustment. Either the ego needs to grow up and be a little larger, or it may need to become a little more quiet. And we think about that ego as being one of the characters, if you want to put it that way, or an attribute of how we operate as we live this life. We have our mind, we have our soul, we have a physical body, and we have an ego. And sometimes they are diametrically opposed. Sometimes one or the other takes precedence and controls what's going on. Most often, though, the self or the soul is the observer of the life. And it's where impressions are made, where growth and understanding and knowing becomes. And so the ego, the mind, and the physical body have to work out their relationship. And that gets a little bit tricky for us as a soul in a human body.
Mhm. Both are important aspects of who we are in that big
Mhm.
concept, in the big picture. And if we don't know how to tame the ego identity, we don't really get to know ourselves on the soul level.
Yes.
And if perhaps that's reversed and we're always living in that, maybe you are super connected and really tapped into your soul and spirit side. But are we tapped into that identity that we came to be here? and experience life in this identity.
The
I
Dharma.
think,
Hmm.
Mhm. And just a quick personal note, wasn't until not that many years ago, although time is weird, so it might be longer than I think, that I really came to understand this is the one wild, beautiful, crazy time I get to be this avatar, this person,
Hmm.
this me.
Incarnation. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And in really thinking about that, you go through a few emotions, or at least I did. You're like, it's the whole existential crisis, and we all die, and I'm not going to exist anymore. And what happens? And what happens to this ego me, this ego identity? But what it did when it truly at that time through my practice that embodiment came to me, it gave me such a deep, deep love for this person of who I am and who I came to be, which was a really hard and revolutionary experience for me. And I still have moments where I don't exactly love myself, but to really think, wow, this is that one time I get to be me will has the potential to really shift how you look at yourself and how you talk to yourself and how you treat yourself.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And, we talk about knowing and loving the self before we can know and love anything other than ourself. And I think you described that really well. And I think I've gone through that experience too. And it is really prominent in practice time during practices and bringing practices to life. You start to bring that practice experience into your day or into your evening or into your dreams at night. That takes a long time. So once again, I'm going to say there's no silver bullet about, I think you mentioned taming the ego and coming into self-love. Um, but I want to just say one thing about the ego uh, that often we don't think about. We have, most of us have a negative perspective about ego. We think that it is, and it can be, uh,
Mhm.
very diminishing. It can be destructive and get in our way. And our dharmic path then has a lot of karma that starts to build up because of the ego. But there is a role that the ego plays if it wants to stay there and just, stay in its own lane. And that is one of protection. So when something shows up that's dangerous or out of alignment with our soul, can be damaging, the ego, through the Manipura, through the solar plexus, gives us a warning, gives us um, an alert. And that's really an important role that the ego plays. So we want to keep that in place because the ego really helps to protect the body, protect the soul, and protect the mind. Um, when we show up somewhere, we do need a little bit of ego in order to be able to, especially, I'll have to tell you, I am an introvert beyond compare. I mean, you could put me way off on the end of that introvert scale. And so for me to show up, I need to have a conversation with my ego, and say, hey, can you help me out here and get this done so that I can go back to, my quiet moment that I really appreciate. And it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate having the ego present some things for me. It's just the way that I operate, and everyone has a different way of being.
Mhm.
Some people are out and very present and extroverted and showing up, and their egos are alive and on fire and charming and charismatic. And that's all good too, because that's about our individual self. and why we're here.
Mhm. Yeah, I think of it like I do everything as being on a spectrum because we live in a
Mhm.
in a reality of polarity and dichotomy. And so you have the underdeveloped and the overdeveloped, and we're looking to balance and find that center, that middle ground where we can express who we are fully while fully embracing all subtle aspects of ourselves as well, the whole, self-sensory human
Mhm.
experience, because we are more than the physical body and the mind. But if
Mhm.
we ignore those, again, it's where are you on that spectrum of our, I was always up here. As I learned how to balance, I can come a little more into my body and who I am, my identity as it expresses itself here on earth in this collective. But there's a development and an evolution, which I believe we mentioned previously when we were
We
talking
did.
about Dharma. Um, and how we must, we have our own needs that, yes, they have to be met. The comma, I don't know if I'm jumping into this as we get to talking about aims, but
Mhm.
we have these needs that have to be met on a physical level. And the same thing with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these physical needs, these desires, these physical things that we need or want, have the ability to make us feel safe and provide us protection. But if they're underdeveloped, we may feel unsafe, and if they're overdeveloped, we may uh, be, hoarding or materials or wealth. We can So there's both ends of the spectrum.
Mhm.
How do we find balance or evolve? Because the aspect of the ego, that aspect isn't positive or negative.
That's
It's
right.
it's how what purpose we use it for, how we
Yeah.
use that to serve us. So,
Yeah. And how we integrate all the subtle bodies that you mentioned and the soul, the mind, the body, and the ego. Um, all of those work together and travel as a unit, as a team. And that helps us to define our Dharma, make decisions that help us minimize creating karma that we may not want along the way. And you mentioned kama, which are desires. And I think we talked a little bit about that as well in a previous episode, and that our desires along the way, our desires can be perfectly in line with our dharmic path. It has to do with how we choose, how we desire. We can desire to um, different levels, different quantities of desire, right? And I think that's what you were talking about with the continuum. We can come along as a team, or we can go overboard with our desires and have excess and entitlement and all those things that the ego may then thrive on and bring that out of balance.
right, right. And as we go, look at the aims of life, that touches our work life, it touches our dharmic path, and ultimately, if impacts our ability to be truly liberated,
Mm-hmm.
to reach moksha.
Yeah, yeah. And each of those can bring karma. We are exuding energy. We are creating actions. We are walking our dutiful path while we're here on earth. And we have desires that are required for that path. Like you mentioned, we have needs where we need certain things. We desire things to help us along the way. We also have arta, which is the work path that's on our dharmic path. It's how we provide service and um, get remuneration of some type. In other words, our energetic exchange while we're here, uh, among others that we are with and to ourselves. And that brings us little practice sessions of, in our last episode, we talked about, and you did mostly, the release, letting go, and bringing liberation or moksha to our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, so each of those aims, they each have their own spectrum, right? So
Yes.
our work we can be using solely to provide material gain, maybe
Mhm.
power, maybe influence, or we can use our work to, yes, support and sustain us, but support and sustain our community, give back to the community, serve the collective. So you can find any and all ways of being in those in that spectrum of our desires, our duties or our work, our path, and ultimately, if we're able to evolve ourselves and our identity, our ego identity, and balance that with our spirit, our soul, then
Mm.
we can not be stuck in our own all the layers that we hold on to that make us us, and we can reach that point of liberation and be free, truly expressing. It's the weird thing, it's a paradox where both things are true at the same time.
Yes,
You
this is very
really
tricky. Hmm.
you're explaining it and it sounds, now didn't you just say, and it's like, well, yes, but
Right,
it
right.
takes both.
Yeah.
You have to focus. The oxygen mask. You have to put it on yourself first and meet your needs first to where you feel secure. However, is that a deep hole? Is that a chasm that can never be filled? If so, maybe we need to look at where that's coming from and do some practices to fill those leaks,
Hmm.
so that you can feel that satisfaction or that completeness that you're looking for through what we're here to do. We want to feel in our human experience, we want to feel satisfied, we want to feel like we're complete. And I think that's that always that elusive, we already are. But it
Hmm.
takes work to realize that and to find that. So it's always that kind of circular snake eating the tail um, image.
Yeah, mentioning feeling satisfied, and we get to the yamas and niyamas, and one is santosha, which is contentment. And so
Contentment.
just bringing that one forward and thinking about karma and thinking about the four aims, we can seek contentment to excess. Often contentment arises because we're not searching for it. And in our last episode, when we talked about the eclipses, I mentioned that the lunar eclipse was in Purva Bhadrapada, where our intentions, and again, we had a lot of conversation around intentions and what that meant for karma, but our intentions um, are such that we don't want to come down to a very narrow, specific result. We want it to be open so that the energy can provide what we need to satisfy kama, our desires. Our dharmic path can help us guide along the way, give us the knowledge and the energy to be able to do that, and also to come in and um, create a sense of intention around service and work and how that looks in our life, and ultimately not generate karma that we may not like or want around seeking liberation. Because some people often, they know that moksha is an aim in life, to be liberated. And when you point at it with too much focus, it will elude you or become misshapen and out of form. And using your spectrum or your continuum example, take you off to the end that maybe you weren't really planning for.
Spiritual maturation. Can we evolve those subtle aspects? And again, this sounds backwards, so that our identity can truly shine and we can be our most authentic and vibrant and radiant selves here in this crazy skin suit human body. At the same time, it's those both things at the same time. That only happens when our ego gets out of the way, when we're able to drop the ego, when we're able to surrender and allow so our ego takes that back seat. In human design, and I just have dabbled in that, so not claiming to be an expert here, but I do love their description of the true self. There's the not self when I'm not being my true self, and then there's that self. But their analogy, the analogy that human design uses, I was very resistant to it at first until I truly embodied what it means to surrender, because surrender was a 4-letter word for me my entire life. I mean, growing up in a church and being church averse at this point, but there was a lot of trauma around that, and reclaiming that idea uh, really opened up my life to to where it needed to go. That stepping out, getting out of your own way. That's a practice. That's what we're here to do, is to that sense of control. We want things to go right and to go well, and we work so hard to create that. And I think too, in mainstream spiritual culture, we get a lot of that with the manifestation crowds, and you can get those messages about you're the creator and it's all you, which again is one of those, well, yes, but also this at the same time. So
Exactly.
so in human design, the idea is you're in the limousine, you're in the vehicle, but you're in the back seat, you're observing. You're just, that ego self is just watching the world go by. And it's when we try to climb up into that driver's seat and drive ourselves around that things get really wonky, and we end up in places where maybe we didn't want to go. So it's such a one of those strange concepts to explain, because it is both are the same. Both opposite ideas are true at the same time. It seemingly conflicting ideas can be true at the same time.
Yes, yes. And it's so powerful to think about how that non-dual way of thinking can bring us into a sense of detachment and neutrality, so that our motivation or our drive, the passion to excel or access or seek something in a way that it becomes elusive, and we get frustrated and we may get angry. It's like, I've been seeking moksha for my entire life, and why isn't it happening? And surrender is a lot like that. And I say that in practices, when we come into Shavasana, or we come into a pose that maybe we want to just spend a little time in, or in meditation, is that seeking surrender doesn't always get us down the path to surrender. And coming inward and finding a focus in a way that you can Maybe it's pranayama, maybe it's, the breath, something simple like that, which isn't so simple, but let's just say it's accessible to most people that are still on the planet. Everybody breathes. Uh, and when we come in and we focus on that, surrender is the side effect. It occurs. So much of what we're talking about today, the four aims of life and karma occurs whether we seek it or not. Dharma occurs as we just live our lives and create actions. Kama occurs because we're human and we want things, right? That looks great. I'm going to do that. I want that over there. And then we come into Arta, and that whole thing shows up again. What is our work? What is our wealth? What is our way of being as we are on our dharmic path? And so we try to do the control that you were talking about. And humans want to control, and that is part of the ego's job, is to try to control what goes on because it's trying to protect us. Unbeknownst to the ego, that control isn't always going to get us to the outcome that is most beneficial to us. And it can bring us into a lot of frustration and what we mentally think of as dead ends, in the path, even though our dharmic path is letting the ego do that at that time because we needed to learn something about it. So that's another one of those both and things that uh, comes into being as our awareness of being human comes to us in waves.
And and it takes discernment, and that to me is what practice is for, is to be able to discern, is this or that?
Mhm.
Is this something that I need to take responsibility for and guide and direct a little bit, or is this a place where I need to sit back and let the universe flow? Surrender doesn't mean apathy.
That's
Surrender
right.
doesn't mean giving up. Surrender is allowing.
Mm.
And there's still observation that goes on, that we are taking in information and discerning what that information means through practice. You mentioned, and that is so one of those things that's paradoxical. It's the easiest and hardest thing you can
Mhm.
ever do. It truly is the simplest, easiest. Sit down for 3 minutes a day and do breath. And gosh darn it, is that the hardest thing to do?
Right.
you know, that
Mhm.
is an example. And how we do anything is how we do everything. So how we show up on our mat or don't show up is how we're probably showing up or not showing up in our life. And every time is different, but it's over time through the discernments and the little, like you said, those little mini micro lessons that we may get, or those big ones that all of a sudden, whether it's the big energy of the eclipse that hit you like a hammer. That's where we can fine tune, refine, and really get in tune with ourselves, so we know what is for us and not for us, or what is tipping us over that edge of, oh, I didn't see how I was trying to manipulate and control that situation. Maybe I just need to stand back and observe a little bit and see what happens. And all
Mhm.
of a sudden things begin to move in a different direction.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of observation that goes
Yeah.
um, into the practice. It's about observing so we can discern.
Yeah. One of my teachers one time said that the pathway to detachment is observation.
Mm.
And I thought about that a long time. It was something that guided me for a while. I still think about it. Some days I get it, some days it's not available. And that's
Mhm.
part of just being human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how there's different parts of our lives where we may be very much in flow and we're doing that. I'm so detached. I'm the observer. Go
Mhm.
sit with your family over holiday dinner and see how much of an observer you are. So we're it's we
Okay.
master one area and we think, oh, I'm so zen. And then we get into a situation and all of those old patterns come up because again, in this scenario, our ego wants to jump up and defend and protect, and it's a constant practice, and
It
it's
is.
the joy of being an observer. When you find yourself being able to be in a situation and not feel those emotions rising, and if they do, just to being able to observe them and say, oh wow, what's that about? Why is that coming up? Because those
Mhm.
emotions are not negative. Emotions aren't negative things. They're just the guidance system that we have to work with. But are we looking at them? Are we saying, what is this? Why is this coming up for me right now, and what does it mean?
And this is all our Dharma. This is the Dharma of the evolution of the ego and moving forward in a way that we can take those moments that you mentioned where no problem, I'm the detached observer. And then when you find yourself in a real testing situation, you can leverage some of that you
Mhm.
practiced. And bottom line, that's the whole purpose for having a
Mhm.
daily practice, whatever that may be. You know, for me, it's yoga, somatic movement, meditation in various days, various lengths of time, but every day something because I want to be able to come back to that space undisturbed and remember it, memorize it like I'm studying it. So when I do come out into life and have other engagements with the external world, I have some resources and some resilience to be able to look, okay, I have a toolkit I've been practicing, so why can't I use it? Let me try. And that's what yoga's about. Yoga's unity. It's about bringing all of that into our unified life, dharma, artha, moksha, kama, and being mindful at each one of those opportunities because they all are an opportunity: desire, work, liberation, purpose. Those are all opportunities in life. And bringing the yoga in, making a more detached and discerning decision about what's happening before responding, if you need to respond at all. I mean, a no response is a response. You have the opportunity to, and I'll just go back to it, control some of the karmic returns that you may receive because it all starts with our thoughts and actions. And so if we're able to respond in a way that we know that there would be a karmic return, then we have options for what type of karma might return to us, either now or in the future or
Mhm.
another lifetime.
It's a rough thing to wrap your mind around, the
It is.
control. The only thing you can control is yourself. So,
Mhm.
and it's one of those cliches that if it's just a cognitive knowing, or I've heard that saying, or I can apply it here, or it doesn't seem real. I just recall being when I can almost remember when this became an embodiment or brought to the surface to become embodied. I was on vacation with my well, there's seven of us, so six other cousins. There's seven girls on my dad's side, and we meet it up every couple years. And I was really struggling with someone in my life who I really felt needed to change. And the Virgo cousin of us, the Miss Logical, gonna really sort me out, just kept saying, because I was probably thinking I was just explaining the situation, and it was very heavy, probably on the complaining of explaining side of things. And my cousin kept saying to me, she kept saying, the only thing you can control is your reaction. You can't control that person. You can control how you respond and how you react. And again, I know that it's hard. These are just words at this moment, but I could not. I was like, absolutely, she needs to change. This is ridiculous. I can't believe she's allowed to act like this in these spaces. And she needs to change, period. End. That's just, everybody knows it. I could not wrap my mind around it. And when I eventually, but that was the catalyst, I had to be brought to my attention.
Mhm.
I had to reject it. I had to sit on it. I had to think on it. I had to process it. I had to practice through it. And eventually, when I was able to shift my perspective, that whole situation shifted. And it's that whole, when you change the way you see things, the things around you change. And it's that when you're in it and you don't want to hear it and you get so mad if somebody says that, you want to throat punch them because you just want the situation to change to suit you right now. And in fact, it's that little lesson that you needed to learn.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the process of the evolution
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
ego, learning
Yeah.
to die to the ego in those moments, and to, when you feel so right, so righteous in your indignation, it's hard to take that step back and
Mhm.
and observe. So
Mhm.
it's all fun and games. It's easy to say,
Mhm.
not
You
so
know,
easy to do.
that's so interesting because in some ways, we can think about it with the four aims. Where does it fit? It may fit in comma in desire because you have a great desire for this individual to do something different, to have different actions, to have different thoughts, different emotions, or whatever. So that is a desire that is being extended out and tried to pull back to control a different circumstance, another human being, maybe. And so when we think about desires, there is a desire there where that's something within ourselves, when we have that kind of sensation and that relationship going on, something within ourselves feels like we need that is going to be something very important. And I would say that many times, not always, but many times, the intention is one of love and care because you see something that you know would be better for someone else, or you see their potential and you want to help them expand it. But at the same time, you're stepping into their dharma, you're
Mhm.
stepping into their artha. You're definitely impeding their moksha, because of their liberation. But and it's to satisfy a kama, a desire that you have. So it feels self-righteous. It feels correct. And one thing that started this whole thing, it's like a snowball, coming down the hill, is at the top, we made a judgment about something. And as we continue to watch and the snowball rolls down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger, and you want to control more and more. Okay, they changed this. Like maybe they got their hair cut. You thought they'd be beautiful if they had their hair cut or something, and they did that. And then you're like, yeah, but you know what? If they just maybe lost some weight, well, and you go down that road, or maybe if they did this instead of that as far as a job or behavior of some type. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon, this is where the whole dilemma of karma happens, is that you take on their karma.
Mhm. I can't tell you how many times I would tell students, and especially so I, as a success coach in a college setting, uh, set hundreds, if not thousands of goals. So using
Mhm.
SMART goals or DAPS goals. And so many times I would run into, and I'm sure, I went through this as well when I
Mhm.
started
Mhm.
using goal setting in my life, but I would have to, goals must be personal. right? So, well, DAPS, if we use DAPS, stated, achievable, positive, personal, and specific.
Mhm.
And we would get to that personal aspect, and somebody would be making, a goal. I want my partner to do this. I want my child to study X amount of nights a week. And well, now wait a minute, let's back up. Is that a personal goal?
Right.
And we so badly want to make goals and set goals for other people because it's good for them and that's what's going to be best for them. But we cannot, and just through my training and as a coach, had to coach many people, myself included,
Sure.
around that concept of what that really means and step back from making goals for other people.
Right.
It sometimes it can be a really tricky. I had folks who would wait, now wait a minute, step back from that, take a look at it. Is that
Mhm. Mhm.
the same thing with positive? I don't want this to happen. Okay, so if we're setting a goal that's positive, how do we flip that around?
Right.
What do we want?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it takes those, and that's why those practices are good too. Just that, using a DAPS model or a SMART goal model, uh,
Mhm.
those tools that we have from so many different walks of life and teachings and guides, they can so help us because until we step back, it's the fish in the water thing again. If you're in it, you can't see it, and it takes stepping back and really looking at it and examining it until we can maybe see, oh wow, I was really trying to change the situation and not myself.
Mhm.
And the self has to come first, or else nothing's
Yeah.
changing. Just pushing
Yeah.
against
You brought
it.
back memories where, as I coach people, sometimes we get to a certain point and they'll say, "Well, what do you think?"
Mm.
Or, "Can you tell me what I can do with this?" And I always have to stop and say, "What do you think? What would you like to do with this?" And just mirror it back to them. Uh, in the early days, we would make lists and I would help them with the lists. And then I realized that I was doing what you were just describing and I was taking on their goal setting. And I think as people go into coaching or teaching or any other helping profession, they reach that milestone where they realize that they're not going to take on other people's karma. They're not going to try to change an individual because our perspective of who they are is definitely um, shrouded in Maya, in illusion, because nobody really knows who anyone is except for the person they know. And most of the time, they're trying to figure that out, which is why we're coaching them. Um, so we have to turn it back to that individual for their own self accountability to do the work, because once again, it's not a silver bullet. And as a coach, um, sometimes people want it to be a silver bullet. They want us to be that bullet. They want us to make those decisions and tell them what to do, and that's not our job. And I definitely don't want to take on people's karma. That happens in astrology readings as well, when someone will ask me a question and I'll have to say, this is a blueprint of what the energies were at your birth, and you have free will when certain things show up to make decisions around it. Yeah.
And this is why, for me personally, the practice I use of Kundalini uh, practice, whether that's Kriya or mantra or meditation,
Hmm.
helps keep that energy sorted. So we have the auric body, and practice, we can strengthen that auric body to help us not take on the energies of
Hmm.
others. Because if you are empathic or you do any work with people, and that could be nursing or in any kind of healthcare profession, that can be in the
Teacher.
teaching professions, that can be
Hmm.
in customer service when you talk to people on the phones, and that transference of energy is happening and you starting to react or get triggered, and you start taking on maybe their energies. Practice, that's what my practice is for, to help me keep my aura, my auric body nice and strong so that I know what's mine and what is not.
Right.
And also so that I know what is my responsibility, and I'm not projecting, which I mean I believe me, I do. Trust me, I know. I'm not saying I don't
Right.
project, but we as we through life, that's why you said it's not a silver bullet. It's a constant unlearning. This goes on for our entire lives. This isn't a one and done. We don't figure out who we are and then it's that forever. We're always evolving. There's so many facets and that's the beauty. If we knew the secrets of the universe, how not fun would that be? So it's this,
Right.
if we turn when we turn that aspect of spending this lifetime and getting to know ourselves and unlearn the things that we put on to find our Satnam, our true identity.
Hmm.
It can be a joyful experience. It takes me back to our very first conversation. You mentioned just about, how did you say it? Like, makes it a joy to be here. We are here to enjoy this experience, and we
Hmm.
get in our own way of that quite a lot. I know how things look on the outside world, and it's very easy to say, yeah, but this, I
Hmm.
don't feel good because, I mean, obviously, clearly, with all that, how can I possibly? All that's going on all the time. It's our responsibility to manage ourselves so we can create for that nuclear revolution, meaning from the inside out, the world that we want
Hmm.
to see together, the world that we want to thrive in together, the world that treats people with more compassion, more kindness, that where we all enjoy being here a whole heck of a lot more.
Yeah, it's easy to blame an external source for something and then wallow in it for a while. Something you said too, which made me think, we're humans. And I think it was when you just mentioned that if we knew all the secrets of the universe, how boring would that be? Right. We're humans because we love mysteries. We love riddles. And so if you think about our dharmic path, aligned with moksha and kama and artha, and the whole concept of the mirror of karma coming back, we're here to solve the riddles, to solve the mysteries. And we're given all these little ones along the way. Some of them are big, right? You mentioned that. And there's a satisfaction that occurs when we've solved that or resolved or found the answer to something. And we have innate curiosity as creatures on the planet, and it keeps life interesting.
Yeah, and I think those little signs that we get along the way, those little connections. We're the algorithm of our own lives. What are
Hmm.
we paying attention to? What meaning are we assigning it? How can what are the layers that I can peel away to see life and myself more clearly? Where can I come into greater balance and harmony with these areas of my life so that I can live in greater ease and greater joy? And in
Yeah,
greater connection with myself and the world around me. Again, we come back, it's all about union. It's all about finding that connection with not just ourselves, starting with ourselves, but then how does that translate into the work we do, the path we're walking, and the connection that we have with all around us, which leads us hopefully all one day to moksha, to liberation.
right.
That's what
Well,
Buddha
we get
said,
those little mokshas along the way. You know,
right?
things are liberated from us, and we liberate things. So uh, it's how we assimilate that, process it, and make it work for us with detachment that we bring us into greater forms of moksha, I think, just from my own experience. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned you can't focus on it. If it becomes your focus, it disappears, it fades away. I always think of archer pose where you're looking straight ahead and you're not gazing at your thumb, you're gazing beyond it. And
Mhm.
you're allowing your focus to soften so that everything around you becomes part of that picture. Um,
Mhm.
I think of it like when you're trail running, if you focus on the roots and the trail right in front of you, you're going to fall. But if
Mhm.
you if you keep your eyes on the horizon and you're running with that, your self-sensory system picks up a lot more and feeds you a lot more information, and you're just sort of floating and coasting by. So
Mhm.
it's kind of that paradox. You've got to have intense focus, but not it, broaden that, soften the gaze, and allow that larger picture to form, and your self-sensory system to open up to stimulus just beyond what we can see and touch and hear.
The intuition. Mhm.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
will guide
Yeah.
us.
Well, we covered a lot of territory today.
I don't even know I'm lost in the woods where I
Well,
took,
I think we could probably call it a day and start thinking about our next episode.
yeah, wonder what it'll look like. Stick with us. We're not
Yes.
sure either.
We're going to just make it a mystery this time. So next episode, stay tuned.
Stay focused, but not too focused.
Hmm. And like, subscribe, ring the bell, and comment. Uh, we love the comments.
Yeah. Let
And
us know any topics you'd be interested in exploring, because
yes,
we're here to continue to explore the mysteries, not to solve them. We're here to ask the questions, not to answer.
yes. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us today.
Until next time, Satnam.
Namaste.